Let me just welcome our viewers, our listeners, regionally, locally, internationally. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Last week we spoke and I said to you that we will be looking at some aspect of leadership. I said that we'll be looking at some aspect of leadership starting today. And so said, so shall it be. We have seen over the years in this country that we have had a number of leaders throughout the length and breadth of this country in various aspects, various form and fashion, leading various organizations, from government to trade unions to community sports group to NGOs and village councils and so on and so on and so on. The list go on. But somehow, as we examine the behavior, of those who hold prestige office, such as the office of the president, the office of the prime minister, the office of the attorney general, the judiciary, law association. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. But as we look at these office holders, we have seen what can be only described as failures within these offices. We have seen people who lead various organizations, for instance, various commissions. We have the Integrity Commission, we have the Police Service Commission. I mean, we have seen the collapse of a number of these institutions by those who we invest and place a title onto them, calling them leaders. Leadership is a very broad-based topic. That topic can go on from today straight to the next year or two. There is various kinds of leadership, and those we may not get into. But at the same time, while some may say it's unlikely to have a good politician and a great leader in the same person, some may say it just cannot happen. It may be very difficult to have a politician and a leader within the same person. But after looking into history, as I continue to approach this study, I may very well prove you wrong as we go along. But what is leadership? Leadership is a process. And this process, ladies and gentlemen, can make or break a nation. It can either make or it can break a nation, this process of leadership. What I want to kind of zero in is who controls the process of leadership. And to control the process of leadership, you will need a leader. You will need a leader. We have seen, ladies and gentlemen, from 1956 to 2023, what has happened to our great country. From 1956 to 1923, by those who control the process of leadership, we can look into history and see what has happened to Trinidad and Tobago by those who control the process. We often speak of integrity within leadership. And while we speak of integrity, ladies and gentlemen, I want to say today that our country needs leaders who would be able to take us and not bring us down. We have seen leaders throughout the years break this country. We have seen leaders throughout the years that damage the image of Trinidad and Tobago. We have seen what we consider to be leaders over the years take this country from a high and bring this country to date, actually dragging on its behind in relation to even the rest of the Caribbean countries. I am not going to get into the different styles of leadership, whether it be autocratic or democratic or laissez-faire. I'm not going into that direction. I want to mostly deal with the leader, what we consider to be leader of a country. So I want to say, ladies and gentlemen, that Trinidad and Tobago in 2023 we have established the worst, the actual worst type of politician to lead this country. We have selected the worst out of the lot that carries the connotation politician/leader. I want to ask a question. And the question that I want to ask: can a politician be a leader? That is the question I want to ask you. Can a politician be a leader? While you contemplate on that, I would say that a leader can be a great politician, But it's up to you to decide whether a politician can be a leader. Because there's some characteristics that goes with a leader, a great leader. And how would you differentiate the difference between a great leader and a politician? That is something that you have to spend some time to look at. But I will tell you today, you can differentiate that by simply watching the leader's aim and action. And if these leads to the victory of his party in the next election, then he must be a great politician. But if these aims and action leads to the improvement of the next generation, then that individual is a great leader. So what I'm saying to you, ladies and gentlemen, is how would you differentiate the difference between a leader and a politician? If you have a politician who is able, by his aims and objective, to have his party victorious in an election, then that individual is a great leader, a great politician, sorry. But if you have an individual who is able, by his aims and objectives, by his actions, to lead and to empower the next generation, then that individual is a great leader. And that is what we must be aspiring for. We must be aspiring for good leaders in this country and not great politicians. Because when you examine the difference between a leader who would make the ideal politician, and you look at the politician who just cannot be a leader, you would understand why Trinidad and Tobago, why we are in this calamity that we are in today. Because there is something, ladies and gentlemen, that we must understand. It's of great necessity to move a country forward. And while we have politicians that hold the office, and while we have politicians who send the signal that they are leading the country, you have to understand where the country is going by those individuals who say they are leaders. You have to understand. You have to examine. So while we are struggling to find great leaders who would become politicians, then we must hold the politician accountable to integrity. We must hold them accountable to integrity. What qualities that we must hold our politicians who run the country to? And remember the question I asked you, can a politician be a leader? And I want you to answer that question.
Based on your definition, I starting to hear you saying that Keith Rowley is a good politician.
A clever politician, but
clever one.
Not a leader. By definition, Keith Rowley is not a leader. He is a politician. Because, let me get into some difference between a politician and a leader, and what qualities political leaders must have in respect to what qualities leaders would have. So let me just go to this information. One of the attributes of a politician divides. A politician divides.
That source you're reading from, because that songing, I mean, sometimes I classify myself as a politician based on the activities I engage in. But as I heard that off the top of your list, I'm wondering if that is true. But then what's the source?
Right. So we'll get into that. This is my research from different, from
Okay.
Hogan and other professionals. So a politician divides while a leader unites. A politician divides while a leader unites. And we have that example right among us in Trinidad and Tobago. We have that example where politicians create this device policies, and not only so, but they utilize languages to captivate a certain group of people within a country. They utilize that group of individuals to solicit votes and to keep themselves in power. So they will divide. We have seen where prime ministers of this country blatantly come out and speak about we on this side and them on that side. Politician does that. So they say we, when you hear this statement that I am a proud black man and we are proud black people and the black people is behind and the black people here and the black people here, that is the subliminal messages of division that is being propagated through the minds of the individuals. So they divide while a leader would unite. A politician's favorite sports, Archie, is not golf. A politician's favorite sports is the blame game. To blame somebody else for their shortcomings. They blame. Let me just use a classic example. America spoke of human trafficking in Trinidad and Tobago. And what we had, immediately, we had a prime minister casting the blame on the opposition. And while the prime minister will cast the blame on the opposition, and while the opposition may stand up and say, well, we're not in government, the fact remains is that the country still remains on the watch list for human trafficking. Still remains on the watch list. So while the politician's favorite sport is to blame, and we have seen this. We have seen this by Keith Rowley. Keith Rowley utilized the blame game in every scenario. We had a situation where a fake oil was brought to the front of the table by a audit that the former Minister of Energy allows to take place within Petrotrin. And when it came to the public domain, when Kamla Prasad Bisesa, the leader of the opposition, brought it to the public domain, what did Keith Rowley did? Keith Rowley went at length, while he and his Attorney General at the time, Faris Alwari, and his minister at the time, do all in its power to keep that investigation at a certain level by Rowley making phone calls and interacting with the subject of investigation, by the Attorney General and others refusing to appeal the arbitration, the arbiter's decision. While all that took place, to the end of the day, we had the Prime Minister came out and blamed the opposition for exposing the affairs. So the blame game is something that continues to play out within these politicians. Then again, number 3, the politician does not mean everything they say. The politicians will say things to accumulate votes. They will say things that will never happen, things that will never materialize, things that will never help you to move in society. While a leader, being a leader, will always stand by what he said and to ensure that what he say is in the interest of you, the people, and to go at length to put you first before self. In our country, politicians put self first. You come quite down the ladder. They put self first. That is what we have today in this country. Number 4, we have politicians who is just reactive. They react to everything. They react to you, they react to me. They react to he, they react to she. They are just reactors. But leaders would always be proactive. Let me give you an example. In 2019, we were summoned and warned of an intended pandemic. We were summoned and warned of an intended pandemic. And when that happened, ladies and gentlemen, we have had it raised in the parliament by the opposition, and we have heard the minister stood up together with his cabinet colleagues and tell us that if we do get a case or two, we get plenty. That not coming here. But because of not being proactive, we had hundreds of individuals losing their life as a result of being reactive and not being proactive. We have had 60 ventilators, while the infection rate at one given time were over 800 daily. We had 60 ventilators. And that is what politicians do. Leaders, when the trumpet song of a warning, leaders will put every measure, every mechanism, every safety precaution in place to avoid the devastation of what we had as a result of this pandemic. Politician Archie prioritize party before country. Party before country. That is what happens from 1956 to 2023. We have seen where these so-called leaders put party before country. A leader will put country before party. A leader would sacrifice. A leader will sacrifice being a leader by putting measures and mechanism in place to protect country first before protecting party. That is a fact. That is what leaders would do. Again, ladies and gentlemen, politicians often not reliable. Politicians often not reliable. I know that a politician stand up and make it quite clear that that politician said that he was going to sponsor a set of uniforms. Stand up on a mic, make it clear, I am going to take the responsibility and sponsor all these uniforms. And just as the meeting finished, I was told, somebody asked the politician, how could we make arrangements to get the uniform? You know what the politician say, Archie? The politician say, I is a politician and politician does lie. That is facts not fiction. So politicians often not reliable. A leader is reliable in every gesture. A leader is reliable in every gesture, ladies and gentlemen. Again, a politician actually use people to get into power. A politician uses people to get into power, while leaders use power to develop people. I want us to get that straight, you know. A politician uses people to get into power. All kind of fancy promises and lies that never happen. You ain't believe me? If you ain't believe me, go back and visit every promise that Rowley made earlier. Every promise he made, go back and visit. A politician use people to get into power, while a leader will use power to develop people. A leader will use every authoritative power that he have to ensure that he develops his country. That is what a leader would do. We have seen over the years politicians come down into the trenches and they make promises. I get phone call all over this country. All over this country. They did promise this and they did promise that, and they promised me this and they promised me the other. And it's nothing but just a promise. And I'm sure you could attest to what I'm speaking about. So you live in a kind of hopeless stage, a hopeless case, because you allow it to be so. But here what must happen going forward. We have to look for politicians with certain qualities that will help them and will also help us. While we wait to find this type of leader that we may not find in plenty politicians, we must now demand that those who sit in the chair of leadership, we must now demand certain qualities coming out from them. And the first quality that we must demand is courage. We must have politicians who have courage. We have plenty politicians courageless. No courage whatsoever. We must demand by those who sit in the chairs of leadership, and I'm speaking about every chair. I'm speaking about the chair of Prime Minister. I'm speaking about the chair of opposition. I'm speaking about the chair of the Police Service Commission. I'm speaking about the chair of the Police Service. I'm speaking about the chair of the Attorney General. I am speaking about the chair of every institution that we place people to lead in that capacity. We must demand what I am going to tell you today. We must demand strong leaders. We must not only demand leaders with courage, but we must demand strong leaders in these positions. When you have a commissioner of police who is weak and allow the chair to be influenced by politicians, we must stand up and kick that out We must stand up and get rid of that. When we have a Chief Justice who will jump into the political arena while the office should stay out of politics and maintain that independence, we must have the courage and the strength to stand up against that. So we need strong leaders in those offices, in those chairs, who would not allow themselves to be influenced to make a mockery of democracy. We must appoint people with the ability to communicate effectively, not some, I'm going to say idiot, but I'll take back that this evening. Not some man who will stand up and tell this country, to tell people to put nuts where monkey put it. We must not allow people to tell us we dotish and stupid in this country and they sit down in the chair. They sit in the chair as a prime minister. They sit in the chair of leadership. Sitting in the chair of leadership with no qualities. Absolutely none. This is what we must demand. People who sit in those chairs must be able, they must have the ability to communicate effectively in every given situation in this country. Number 4, we must have people in leadership position with knowledge. People with knowledge. We have seen, we have experienced. Patrick Manning say all you need is a level head and common sense to be a minister. Remember Patrick Manning said that? We have seen D.L. Singh tell you that wearing a mask is absolutely no importance in this country in relation to the pandemic. Wearing masks is absolutely of no importance. Then they come and they're penalizing you to pay $1,000 if you ain't have a mask on. You understand what I'm saying? So we must have people with knowledge. We must have people sitting in those chairs who can make good judgments on every given situation. They must be able to make good judgments in every given situation. When we have situations where an attorney general was just a lawyer for some people, and then the attorney general now flip the coin to prosecute the same people who he was just defending. What kind of judgment is that? What kind of judgment is that? We have had situations where the court would have been able to make a clear decision on A.V. drilling arbitration, on Malcolm Jones' situation, and all these situations, but because of political partisan with friends, partner, and financiers, those who sit in the chair took it upon themselves to wipe away the millions and billions of dollars that the country would have benefited from. So while they boast about Steve Ferguson and Ishgal Baran Singh, millions of dollars that they would get back, what happened to the Malcolm Jones million? What happened to the Malcolm Jones billions? You see? Poor judgment. poor judgment. A matter of fact, no judgment at all. We must demand vision. Number 6, our leaders, our so-called leaders, our politicians, some of them, they are visionless. They have no vision. They have no plan for the country. The country running on autopilot. Is whatever happened, happened. And according to the man who dead. The scripture will tell you, for a lack of vision, people perish. And when you have people sitting in the chair of leadership and doesn't even carry the qualities of a leader, you know what happened? People will perish. We are in a situation where crime is the number one topic. And you know why it's out of control? It's because of a lack of vision. When a government have no vision, you will end up in that scenario. And while on that, Archie, let me just interject to let Trinidad and Tobago know that the latest invasion we had is the PNM office in the constituency of Labrie. The MP/councillor's office within the constituency of Labrie were compromised by invaders, and they used the wall, the side of the wall, to break the wall to gain entry into the MP's office, where, from my source, they took away fans and gas tank and firecracker and so on and so on. So it seems as though that these invaders, yes, this is the photo Archie put up there. That's the MP office that's situated in the constituency of Labrie in the Rancho Quemado area, which also houses the councillors for Erin and Palo Seco. And this is where they gain entry. And they tote out what they had to tote out. And this is the situation as we speak. So that's the office, that's the latest invasion that we have here. So as we continue, and again, vision is of utmost importance, because if this country leaders had vision, these politicians had visions, we would not be in the state that we are in today. But let's move on. Not only must they have vision, Archie, but they must have power to implement visions. You see, we have a set of dreamers in this country also, you know. Yeah, it applies to courage. But in this case, we have plenty of those individuals who just dream about this. We could do this, we could do that, we could do the other. And guess what? They implement nothing. And this is a broad scope topic, power to implement that vision. Because actually, I know so much people have visions in this country, but you know they lack? They lack the power and the fortitude to implement those visions that would only help Trinidad and Tobago. And I'll leave that there for now. But we must also have number 9. Or number 8. We must also have trustworthy individuals. That is one of the qualities that is desperately needed in this country. Trustworthy leaders. Trustworthy leaders. I don't want to say too much on that. I want to leave that lingering right there trustworthy leaders is of necessity. And in this case, trustworthy politicians. Trustworthy politicians. And I know you could attest to all that I'm saying here, you the public. Number 9, we need politicians above reproach. We need politicians with the qualities above reproach. That is what we need. We don't care if somebody else do it. We don't care if somebody else do it. You are our leaders in the political arena. We want you to be above reproach. I don't want to hear them do the same thing and we do the same thing. I don't want to hear we do it and we get catch and them do it and they get catch. Be above reproach. That is what you must be. Number 10, we need politicians with self-control. We have too much politician out of control, much less self. We need politicians with self-control. That again I will leave there. Too much politician with no self-control. Getting tied up with X, Y, and Z. Number 11. We need politicians we need respectable politicians. Respectable politicians. Respectable people who lead. Respectable. Another serious shortfall in our society. Another serious shortfall in our society. Next, we need non-violent politicians. Non-violent politician. It has some politician that beat the wife. Some politician abusing the husband. Some are politician abusing everybody. They are abusing everybody. Listen to all the prime minister. Abuse everybody, the whole citizenry. Non-violent politician. We need politicians. Well, it's going to get sensitive here now, Archie. We need politicians who is not a lover of money. Well, boy, some politician going to cost me here now. We need politicians who is not a lover of money. We have too much politicians who love money, who will do anything for money, and who ended up in all kind of bacchanal because of money. All kind of investigation because they love money. Too much politician. Money is a problem in the eye. Who in walk kick back, walk kick forward? Who in getting kick back and kick forward, walk kick sideways? Who in getting kick forward, kick back and kick sideways? They kick it anyhow. The love of money, the root of all evil. And that is where some politician lies. Evil. They will do anything for money. Anything. They will sell their soul. They will take out the kidney and the lungs and sell it. Some of them love money so bad, they will take out the 2 lungs. And as they receive the money, they drop down on their head. That's how bad they love it. Next one. We want leaders with good reputation. We want people who sit in those chairs of leadership while they are politicians. We want them to have good reputation. We have too much politicians with bad reputation while they're sitting in the parliament. Bad reputation. Reputation no good. No good, ladies and gentlemen. But they are sitting in the parliament. Who can get account for money? Who deposit money? Who can fill out the integrity form? Who leave out some of what should be on the form? Who is good businessman? Who get 400,000 off? Who sell car and in transfer? Who? Too much. Too much. No good reputation. Too much. Next one, Archie. We want sober politicians. We want sober politicians. We are too much politicians telling we about they feeling fainty. They're feeling fainty in Panyard. Too much politicians. Drunk. We want sober politicians. That is the qualities that we're looking for. I don't want to know who want to fall down in Panyard and who feeling fainty and who didn't eat. We want sober politicians in every way. We want you sober-minded and we ain't want you drunk either. Sober politicians. That is some of the qualities that we must look for. That is some of the qualities that we must demand. And last but not least, we want politicians with integrity. Last but not least, we want people who hold these positions. While they hold these leadership positions, we want to demand that these qualities be forthcoming. Because without these qualities that I mentioned, ladies and gentlemen, what we will have is what we have had over the years. We will have allegations of misbehavior in public office. We would have allegations of corruption. We will have allegations of abuse of power. We will have allegations of everything that you could think about in this country. This country, ladies and gentlemen, it is starving. This country is begging. This country is pleading for politicians with integrity to lead. And mind you, I am not just speaking about leaders here, I am speaking politician general. I am speaking those in government offices that hold leadership position. I am speaking about those who hold community positions. I am speaking about those in the business sector. I am speaking about those in the chambers of commerce. I am speaking about those throughout the rank and file of Trinidad and Tobago. I am speaking about those who in the teaching profession. I am speaking about those who is in health. I am speaking about those who is in social development. I am speaking about everybody. I am speaking about the parent in the home, the father, the mother that leads the home. These are the qualities that you have to possess in order to change the society. I put it first to the leaders, because the leaders of this country is a disgrace. The leaders of this country is a disgrace to the children of this country. Every ministry is some serious allegation. And it's more than allegation, because there is some level of evidence. I don't care about the loophole that has been utilized to get politicians off the hook. I don't care about the great lawyers that you will pay and utilize to get you off of the hook. I am saying some of you politicians, you rotten from the head. You so rotten that people could smell you even with the best perfume on. Some of you politicians. We must demand people who hold these offices to be above board without reproach, sober-minded. We must demand integrity in every corner. We have an integrity commission. It's the biggest joke in this country. I don't know why they don't wipe that integrity commission off the list. Because it seems as though that the integrity commission have no integrity in themselves, much less to look for integrity in others. Because everybody have a partner. No integrity whatsoever. And then to the end of the day, we believe that we could come down on everybody else. We believe that we could divide the country to utilize and to gain our own selfish ambition. We believe that, look, we will hold on to what is not ours. It matters not what happened to the country. We will hold on. That is where we are. There is some politicians who run out of ideas, who run out of vision, visionless. But they rather the country sink. They rather the country go below water than to get up and say, look, my time has since expired, and therefore I am not able to lead this country down the path that will take the next generation into the future. They will rather buy more guns and more ammunition. They will rather buy more police vehicles. They will rather encourage police to shoot to kill, because they run out of ideas. They are out of vision. So therefore the country remains on autopilot. And we are blowing through the cloud by any storm. The country could end up anywhere, anytime, because our leaders run out of vision. So what they do is utilize the divisiveness of division in order to claim and to stay in power. What they utilize is what we call the loyalists. The loyalists in this country, they are a detriment to this country, because the Prime Minister could do what? The Prime Minister could run this country below the chalk. They say they are loyal. They say loyalty is the policy. And once we loyal, we'll keep the PNM in power. Loyalty is also a destruction. Let me repeat that again. Loyalty is also a destruction. You want to be loyal? Be loyal to what is right. That is where your loyalty became champion. That is where your loyalty would be registered in the books of history, that you are loyal to what is right. How in God's name you can be loyal to what is wrong? That is why this country is where it is. Because people are loyal to stupidity. People are loyal to dictators. And if you are loyal to what is wrong, then how can you be loyal to your own children and family? I often say loyalty have no price attached to it with Victor Roberts. I often say loyalty have no price attached to it. Because when you could buy my loyalty for $1 million, you can turn around and sell my loyalty for 5 cents. The people who will be loyal to the wrong thing is the people who have to utilize that loyalty to hold on to a position. Let me repeat that. The people who would be loyal to the wrong thing, to what is wrong, to make it more plain, they are the ones who have to hold on to what is wrong in order to stay in a position. You want to know how position must come? Position must come because of your merit, not because of your loyalty. Anytime you have a position in life because of being loyal to what is wrong, anytime you have a position out of loyalty and not out of merit, then you are a failure to your own character. You are a failure to your own character. My loyalty will always stand with truth and stand for what is right, even though if it means standing by myself. My loyalty will always stand for truth and stand for what is right, even if it means standing by myself. You see, we have rotten politicians because their character is rotten. We have politicians that will always engage in the wrong thing because that is their character. We will have politicians who will always be involved in some illegal activity. You know why? Because that's their character. My father used to say, Victor, you could take a pig out of the mud, bathe the pig, shampoo the pig, put on a jacket, a tie on the pig, and let go the pig. You know where he heading for? He heading straight back into the mud hole. Because by nature, by the character of the pig, that is where he belongs. We have some politicians in this country that will shame this country, that will shame any student who will look up to them. They are embarrassed. Omar used to tell me he want to be a prime minister, not anymore. Why? Why you don't want to be a prime minister anymore? You know why? Because he said, Daddy, the prime minister does cuss. Amongst other things. I call Omar, I say, watch. That is the prime minister. Watch him. Watch this little young girl he whining on. Watch him. And on top of that, the prime minister boasts. He boasts. He say, I and Rohan and Rigello walking across the stage, and this young girl come back on me and hear him, no shame. And you expect that children, decent children, will want to mentor that? Watch what is happening in the schools, in the Asian schools. All in the public domain. We hearing who fighting for the minister, who fighting for this minister, who fighting for that minister, who hit who ain't hit. Some minister hairstyle is fight. What do you expect in these schools? Where is the morality and the integrity amongst people who lead? Politicians have become so shameless with their activity that it seems as though some of them proud to be arrested. Actually, you got probably phone number, we go take some calls. It seems as though that some of them proud to be arrested. And they tell you, don't worry, man, we go win that case, don't worry. Why you have to go and answer in the first place? Why you have to go and answer in the first place? I mean, come on, people. We cannot continue like this. We want a group of politicians with a high standard of morality, with a high standard of integrity. We want politicians who would look after the interests of the country, while it is in your nature as politicians to look after the interests of the dollar and to look after the interests of yourself. Welcome, caller.
Good night, Mr. Archie. Good night, Mr. Victor Roberts.
Good night. Good night.
Very nice program tonight from Mr. Victor Roberts. I tell him already that I had to open my church for him because the way he preached, but he used something wrongly. It wasn't a pig, it was a hog. You're laughing, Archie. I serious what you're talking about, you know. Right?
Thank you, caller.
Enough respect to you, my brother.
Makano, I make all that voice, you know. That voice can't hide, you know. Let me say a special good night to Makano. Archie, that is an individual who always on the road. As you say, let me go, he always there. Every group, every protest, that man there. That is one man. I think he was walking in front with you, Archie, on the last. That man always there, boy. Good soul there. Blessed good night, Makano. This is what we need in this country. The number to call is 3735488. We go take some calls. This is what we need in this country. We need this thing had to change some way. It have to change somewhere, and the change had to start with you.
Victor, this program, boy, you get me quiet, boy, you get me frightened, but you also set me thinking plenty. That let us say we look into to get an ideally led country, then what you are saying is, in the future, we may need to seek out and support persons that have all of these traits. How do we do that? Maybe we need to start like doing debates or inviting people, asking them specific questions, having them take calls to see if they have good reputation and thing. But what you saying here really set me thinking. I mean, the show start off normal, and I didn't mean to write down, but I just say, look, let me try and keep a track. But when I watch this thing, if we could identify future leaders, right? What we have right now. Mm-hmm. But we must look forward, and maybe these party supporters, because this particular topic to me cross party lines, whether you're in the PNM or the UNC, yep, you should be looking for these traits, because eventually one of them will lead. But we would like these traits.
When you look at the international community, Archie, and the way in which they select their leaders, their leaders have to go through this question and answer segment, you know, because they want to ensure that the people that they place in to lead a country is people with these qualities.
Well, you're giving me a good idea. Maybe we should find a host who could do some of these. Maybe I don't like to copycat America, but I like watching the American debates when they have the primaries and they're trying to debate where leaders actually debate each other, right? So that maybe some of these traits might be able to come out, especially, well, in America they have the primaries. Down here, I don't know what we just have in order to like select a leader, right? Maybe in the internal elections of a party. Let's just take, for example, when UNC had their internal elections. Maybe instead of Vasanda side and Kamala this side, a kind of conversation or debate in which we could see whether these traits come out, rather than just I like she, I like he. Because what you say in here, man, these things about self-control and respectful and integrity, right? These things people just want in a leader, and then goods and services will naturally flow to the people, because then you won't find lack of water, lack of medical attention, because then people wouldn't be a lover of money. They wouldn't talk the walk, you know, they wouldn't be talking the walk. Because I watching this list here, boy, I think we need to store this list away and let's use it to see if in the future we could eventually, instead of just putting on a collar and who support who and who like who and who is who friend. I think we really need to start looking at some way of finding leaders that have these qualities.
Arch, if you take this into consideration, and we have leaders who following this kind of quality, I am telling you, we would not end up in all the different scenarios that we are now faced with members who sit within the cabinet. We will not end up with this Foster Cummins bacchanal. We will not end up with this Camille Regis bacchanal. We will not even end up with all these allegations with Ravi Ratiram and this one and that one. We wouldn't end up with these things. We would not end up with these things. And I know some people may very well have problems, but I always say, Archie, and you know that, I am not here to be liked or for people to like me. I am dealing with issues and I am dealing with facts. And if we have people who sitting in the parliament who would have these qualities, actually we would not be in the state that we are in today. We have run from 1956 after the independence of Trinidad and Tobago to date. And every government that passed, we had serious allegation. Serious, I'm talking about every government, everyone. We have not had a government to pass without serious allegation. And you know what we do over and over? We always say, well, we had to look for the best out of the lot and we go with the one with less allegation. But may very well be all the allegations may not come to the front line. So when you tell yourself, well, NAR was less or this one was less, you much allegations will be under the carpet, Archie? They just sweep that under the carpet like nothing. Watch all these files that Rowley had. And if somebody didn't leak these files, you think we would know? If somebody didn't leak the Inez Gate, you think we'd know Rowley get 400,000 off? You think we'd know Rowley daughter, he wife, everybody who get off? It's people who had to leak this information. And when the information leak, then they're more concerned about finding who leaked it than prosecuting those responsible for the criminality or for the criminal act. That is what we have in this country. No government that passed from 56 to now is without allegations of corruption. And I mean, people just don't get up one morning and say, let we make up this, let we fabricate this, let we this. We have to have going forward to move this country forward and to bring the level of leadership traits that this country desperately need. We have to do things differently. What we have, we have. But we have to make a decision. We have to make a decision. This country is run by a group of elites. And if this type of integrity, if number 16, integrity, remains to the front, if every one of these items that I identify here today, Archie, we have integrity running alongside all, coming down the road. You know what country you're talking about? You talking about a country where the wealth will be able, I mean, we may very well be heading in a direction if we have leaders to take up this kind of this kind of traits. We may very well have a country that all of us will be proud with. Welcome, Gola.
Sure.
Welcome, Gola.
Yeah, the nice Hitachi. Calling from right down the road. We tell you about the character. That word should have been at the front of the list. Because without that, you can't do nothing that you have on the list. You can't do nothing that them goes there. But character is supposed to have all these things here that you have put down there on the list.
Somehow I'm not hearing.
I'm not hearing you clear, caller.
All right, what I am saying is that the word character you used tonight, that word's supposed to be at the top of the list.
Mm-hmm.
Because character shows everything that you are.
Right?
Right? So I have much to say, but you know plenty of people have that. Even plenty of these politicians, even look at Limo. This fool is coming on people's TV to tell this kind of stupidness.
Yeah.
You get a judgment from the Privy Council, and you talk about you can't talk about that or write about that because you will be in contempt. That's out in the public already. And these people supposed to uphold the law of Trinidad and Tobago. Okay. You talk about the hawk, the fella talk about the hawk just now. I feel a better see they could do with somebody better. All right, brother. Good night.
Thank you.
He spoke about character, but the character is the net result of all these
Correct.
traits.
Correct. And this is what is needed. I mean, we just cannot go as we go in and believe that, look, all will be well and by some miracle Trinidad and Tobago will be able to come out of the sinking sand that we are in. It would not work like that, ladies and gentlemen. The time has come where we, the people of the country, have to move away. We have to move away from the type of politics that we continue to indulge ourselves in. Who like who, and if I like you, you is my leader, and if me like you, you could be as good as you want. No. We have to strive for excellence. We have to strive for excellence. The country is going down a pit. Nobody seems to have the answer to fix the problem. Nobody wants to take the initiative to take action against what is happening. What we have is good talk show hosts. What we have is good social media coverage. And we believe that just by talking today, tomorrow, next week, every week, that the problem will fix. The problem won't fix so. The problem have to start to fix from right inside of our own brains. Here's where the problem had to fix. Inside your head. And if the problem fix inside your head, then your body will respond to what is inside your head. You know why nobody doing nothing with what happening in this country? Because there are nothing inside their head. Absolutely nothing more than old talk. You understand? You know why nobody coming out there and stand up and say, hey, we can't take this no more? You know why? Because all you still believe that is not home by all you yet. It's not home by all you yet. Today when I hear the break open the PNM office come through the wall, two things run through my mind. I say, what, like the PNM started listening to Julia Davy? Like the first thing come to my mind. And the second thing come to my mind is, Victor, do not rejoice over evil. But the first thing come to my mind, I say, but like they listening to the PNM started listening to Julia Davy now. And then the second thing come to my mind is, don't rejoice over evil. And I just rebuke that thought. But to the end of the day, Trinidad and Tobago, we doing nothing about the situation. Absolutely nothing. Because it's not home by us as yet. But hold on. It's going to reach. Because the more the politicians mess up the country, is the more the criminals will act. The more the politicians have nothing in place for the young people, is the more the young people will turn to crime. The more Rowley take away all the employment, is the more all the children will commit crime. That is the fact. And when you have leaders, politicians who pretending to be leaders, And all these politicians care about is their stay in office. All they believe me? If all they believe me, all they better believe me. Because what these politicians care about is their stay in office. And they will do anything to stay in office. They don't care who dead as long as they stay in office. They don't care who live as long as they stay in office. They don't care about your well-being as long as they stay in office. That is the goal of the politician, to stay in office. We have to breed a group of leaders whose office is not important and whose office is not their main focus. We have to breed a group of leaders who would take interest in the politics to ensure that Trinidad and Tobago remain sustainable and a country to be reckoned with throughout the length and breadth of this hemisphere. At one time, ladies and gentlemen, we were the gem of the Caribbean. We were the gem of the Caribbean. Why we are just brass in the Caribbean now? It is because of politicians who did not have these qualities, and they were not leaders in the interests of the country. They were just politicians acting as leaders with the interests of self. And when you have self-serving interests in leadership position, then you are definitely going to bring the country to its knees. And we have since passed our knees, and Trinidad and Tobago, it's now on its belly. We are crawling. We are crawling. And while we have those who aspiring to tell you that they're not like PNM and they're not like UNC, I want to tell you here tonight that the ambition of all of them who will say that to you is the same ambition to get into office. That's the ambition. All the fancy promises that they will make and tell you that we are the alternative. Let me tell you something, Trinidad and Tobago. Don't be fooled by fair words and fancy speech, because that only deceives the hearts of the simple. They are on the same road. And the road is to get into office and stay into office. The decisions that would be made would be decisions to get into office and decisions to stay into office. That is what they cannot beat Keith Rowley with, because Keith Rowley is one of the most clever politicians in this country at this time. While Keith Rowley is the worst administrator, while Keith Rowley, I don't know where I could put him in on this list. I will have to remove some of the word none and put him inside there. That's the only place. But while that may be so, I am telling you tonight that Rowley will unfox. He will outfox the fox himself. And I see he pelt a dread blow at the fox. I see he and the fox hug up, shake hand, bam, bam, bam. Next 2 days, I see he say the fox drink the rum and the fox drunk. Hey, watch. This country is a mad place. But ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something tonight. You see this list here? Take this list. Put it on all your door. And every morning when you go out, make sure and understand the list and grow towards perfection on that list. And every evening you're coming in, watch it. And when you reach inside, treat your family and treat them with that high level of integrity. Integrity is what will change this country, starting from the school children and starting from within your homes. Here is where I'll have to leave it tonight, Archie. And
yes, correct. Because we're standing by to join the critical conversations, who would be featuring Senator Jayanti Lakshmi Diyal and Ravi Balgobin, the community activists. And of course, you know, the topic will be Privy Council ruling, victory for democracy. Tomorrow we have press conference, 10 a.m. from the opposition leader office. It will be live on all the UNC networks as usual. So you could look forward to that.
Actually, I know if you could change our name, you know, Victory to Democracy, because I think the only time you will have Victory to Democracy is when we get rid of the PNM.
Well, I think you make us start this evening.
So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Here's where I will leave it tonight. Be safe as much as you can. Go with God, and we'll see you back on Friday. I'm out.
expired and whether or not we're going to mandates that we do. Yeah, so it's bittersweet, like I said, because we did get a victory. We set out in this journey before the courts to try to get a ruling that invalidated everything government was doing in terms of local government reform, which it did. Unfortunately, the government doesn't want to accept that decision. And as usual, the PNM remain wrong and strong in everything that they do. And the reality is we may have to go back before the courts again to get a separate ruling directing them specifically to hold an election as is mandated.
Mr. Maharaj, first I must commend you, especially as a young person, for your bravery and this sort of activism, fighting for democracy and whatnot is really and truly commendable, because we don't see young persons taking this stance and going this length to achieve these things. But before we go to, if we going back to the courts and all that, what I want to know, and I think a lot of persons, especially a young person like myself, what we want to know, as the claimants in this case, can you share with us what was your initial motivation or what drove you to taking this legal battle with the government to court, and what you hope to achieve? Did you expect this outcome?
Well, I mean, I expected the outcome from the very beginning. That's the reason that we decided to pursue it, not only through the High Court and the Court of Appeal, but we went all the way to the Privy Council, because we expected that a rational court would share our own views that what the government was doing is illegal. In terms of what we were trying to achieve, I mean, it was very obvious at the time that the government announced that they would be implementing the amendments that was passed earlier in the year. They had a round of amendments that they brought before the Parliament. It was passed in Parliament and in Senate with the government's majority. The opposition didn't vote in favor of these bills in either house. So they had their majority, and the majority was enough to get these bills passed, and then it was assented to. And the thing about it is that during the debate of these bills, and this is the important part, because this is what essentially got the Privy Council to rule in our favor, is that the government at no time gave any indication that the amendments that they were trying to pass in the Parliament would have been implemented with the current term, that was the outgoing term that was serving in the local government councils at that time. Right, so they didn't say that it was going to be implemented with them, and so the assumption was that whatever amendments were passed would have been tacked on to the incoming term that would have been the person elected after the local government election. So it was a shock and a surprise to me and everyone, I think, across the country, including the opposition, when in October of last year, which would have been just over a month prior to the scheduled expiry date of the local government term, which was December 3rd, the Minister of Local Government came and announced that, no, we're postponing the elections, where these amendments were meant for this current term, and so the current term now serves 4 years instead of 3, and there's no need for a local government election. It'll be held in 2023 or 2024, right? So, I mean, that was baffling that they did it, and especially, again, that they waited for the very last minute, a month before election was supposed to be held. So, I spoke with my attorneys, and they agreed with my position that, you know, this was highly illegal. And you know, it was what they were doing was unconstitutional.
Mr. Maharaj, I want to just come in and ask you one thing before you continue. As you mentioned something, I just want to unpack that quickly. You said you spoke with your attorneys, right? There's this public discourse, of course, from certain persons who do not want to accept what the ruling is, that you chose UNC lawyers to fight the government. Can you respond to that?
Well, absolutely. And I'll tell you, I didn't choose the UNC lawyers. I chose winning lawyers because throughout the years, I've had a great many legal battles with this current government. And in every one of those battles, we were able to come out victorious, and it's entirely because of the team of Anand Ramlogan, Senior Counsel, Ms. Janti Lachmidial, and the entire team at Freedom Law Chambers in San Fernando. You know, they understand the constitutional laws better than the government and better than most attorneys in Trinidad and Tobago. And it's for this reason, their expertise and their experience, especially with Mr. Anand Ramlogan, who's a former Attorney General, that is the reason we're able to put forward these cases and actually get the victories in the courts. Again, you know, in this matter, we had to go all the way to Privy Council to convince them that, you know, we were correct. But the thing about it, it's because of the way that he constructs these cases and builds them. And again, with Ms. Lachmidial, who will be coming on in a short bit, you know, they are really the geniuses who allow these cases to be won in the courts. And I think they don't get the credit that they deserve, really.
Well said. I want to bring in Senator Lachmidial. I know you are probably in commute right now on the road. Are you with us?
Hi, Chris. Good night. I am. I do apologize for the late ending of the Senate. We have some rain, and so yes, I am in commute. So I will keep my camera off. But I am here and I'm listening. Yes.
Okay. Beautiful. So, as one of the lawyers involved in this case, right? I'm sure there were some legal arguments presented before the Privy Council. Of course, we can't go through the entire arguments, the argumentation here tonight. But what were the key points that helped secure the victory for this for democracy, as it's been described?
Well, I think basically that. So, if I just put it very simply, when you pass a law, laws are always forward speaking. So I'll give you a simple example. You can't, for example, pass a law today that says wearing, you know, a yellow T-shirt is illegal, and then charge someone for wearing a yellow T-shirt last week. You understand? There's a rule against something being retrospective. So the main legal argument that we raise is that by interpreting the act, this was an amendment to a provision. You had a provision in law that says the term of office of a councillor shall expire 3 years from the date that he first took office. And the government amended, as part of their package of local government amendments, amended that section to say the term of office of a local government representative shall be for a period of 4 years and will come to an end on 4 years from the date he first took office. Now, that, in our view, could only take place when a fresh councillor is elected. It could not be applicable to existing councillors because that will be retrospective. By that interpretation, that it applies to existing councillors, what the government was essentially doing is going back in time to 2019 when you voted for a councillor and saying you are now voting for someone for 4 years. When in truth and in fact, in 2019, you voted for someone, you voted for them for a period of 3 years. And that was essentially the critical argument that was accepted by the board. And that is why, you know, and it's on that basis that we won. They also made it very clear that, look, there was, you know, it was ambiguity. And any time that you're dealing with ambiguity in legislation, and especially with legislation that deals with voters' rights, you have to, you know, err on the side of caution. And really, you know, you would never want to interpret a law that is unclear or a bit ambiguous in a way that would, take away rights. The Privy Council was very clear that being able to vote somebody out of office is just as important as being able to vote them in. So you had a right, which accrued to you in 2019, that come 2022, I should be able to vote out my representative. And they basically tampered with that right.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Maharaj, I want to get a response from you on something regarding the Privy Council ruling. Now, again, as we described earlier on in the show, that it's a triumph for the people's right to vote. In your opinion, how does this decision impact the future of local government elections in Trinidad and Tobago? And what changes do you anticipate in this electoral process?
Well, one of the biggest arguments that we had to make and that we had to convince the courts of was that citizens have a right to vote in a local government election. Because it's not something that's ever been established in any of the countries across the Commonwealth. And it's actually something that is prohibited by a number of treaties, including the European Council for Human Rights. So, that argument, I think, is one of the best arguments that will impact our country and the Commonwealth moving forward, is having a court establish that, yes, there is a right. It may not be a constitutional right, but there is a right that's there for persons to be able to vote in a local government election. And already we see countries, I know Mr. Ramlogan said that he had interest from persons in Mauritius. And in other countries across the Commonwealth, I know there's a case in the UK going on right now as well that was behind ours, looking at our case in terms of the ruling and how it may impact citizens in the UK in that regard. So yeah, this is a case that is going to have a definite impact on the way local government is considered across the Commonwealth, and will be used to be able to give persons in the Commonwealth and in Trinidad and Tobago more voting rights as time progresses.
Wow, that is quite some way.
If I could,
yes.
Yeah, if I could jump in on that too. I want to say one thing as well. When you bring cases like this, the impact is more far-reaching than just the election you're talking about. It will also influence policy. And something that I have noticed with Ravi's success in this matter is that it's provoked a conversation that we had in the past but has sort of died down. And that is the need for constitutional reform to introduce two things. One is to have local government as part of our constitution so that the right to vote will be given constitutional recognition. I think now that the government is saying that they are going to add more power to local government and make the role of local government more important, then certainly that ability to vote in local government elections perhaps deserves constitutional protection. The second thing that I've noticed is that, again, a conversation that we may have had over the years when we talk about constitutional reform, but this case has certainly revived it and may very well be a reason why or have an impact on policy going forward with respect to this, is the need for fixed date elections. Someone said to me, he said, listen, having fixed dates for elections is a feature, let's say, you will see in the United States. And he said, the days of, keeping date in your back pockets and pulling it out when it is politically convenient are over. And we, as a maturing democracy, should have that type of structure to elections. So you cannot have people just, leaving there wondering, well, when they're going to call the date, and then, people interpreting the law to defer dates and so on. In the past, perhaps we didn't see it as being so necessary, but this case and the fact that you had to go all the way to the Privy Council to force our government to not delay an election by an entire year may very well highlight and influence, decisions in the future and highlight the need to have an amendment that would introduce fixed dates for elections.
Go ahead, Chris.
I just want to find out something for the benefit of the listening and viewing public. What would be the process to to implement fixed date elections for general and local elections? Because I'm seeing questions being posed about that.
Yeah, that would for general elections, those things would require they would require serious amendments to the EBC, the Representation of the People Act, you may have to also consider, again, if you want to give it constitutional protection, bringing an amendment to the Constitution, which would require, a certain majority and all of that. So those things that we consider. Introducing local government into the Constitution definitely requires amending the Constitution, and that would mean you need to have a majority. But it is something that came up when this local government reform was being considered, and something that I think that, really does deserve some consideration. So that it's when you have something that's given, that is in your Constitution, it's given a higher level of protection from interference. than just something that's in a regular law. A regular law could be changed by Parliament. When something is in the Constitution, and particularly if you entrench it with special majority and all of those things, then you really have to have a wide base of support, or a really huge majority, like a 2/3 or 3/4 or whatever it is, the case may be, in order to make amendments to it. So it cannot be tinkered with by a simple majority. Like, for example, the way the local government, the Municipal Corporations Act was just, these reforms that the UNC didn't agree with. A lot of that the opposition did not agree, and it was passed by simple majority.
Senator, speaking about protection, considering the significance of this ruling, what are the larger implications for our democracy, our rule of law? How does this decision reinforce the importance of a check and balance within our political system?
Well, I mean, the case really, I think, focused on, well, it's the check and balance in this case, it shows that it's working because we have a judiciary, we have a judicial system, and it is through having an independent judiciary, albeit at the highest level, being the Privy Council, that we were able to keep a check on executive power. You see, what happened here is that, and as you know, and as I've spoken extensively on today, there are three arms of the state: executive, legislature, and judiciary. In this case, the legislature would have passed something. Was it the intention of the legislature that it should have applied to existing councillors? We said no. The executive, on proclaiming the law, said, yeah, that's how it is to be interpreted. No one ever asked the question, well, when parliamentarians passed this amendment to change 3 to 4, did they actually think it was going to apply to the existing councillors? And there was no discussion on that point in the House when the bill was debated. Not really glean the intention of parliamentarians. I thought that it was, because nobody thought that it could be interpreted that way, right? So the absence of a discussion on it to me was indicative of that. So when the executive decides that they are going to interpret a law in a particular way, whether or not that was the intention of the parliament, well, then the judiciary has to step in, and you have to utilize the judicial process, which is what we did in this case, in order to hold them to account. And that's what we did, and the system worked. And in this case, I would say I'm very grateful for the fact that the system works, because you do need to have a mechanism through which the citizen can express his displeasure with the actions of our political directorates, being that being the executive, of course.
I'm seeing a question on the chat here by Dr. Philip, and he said that there were several articles asking for the CCJ and the removal of the Privy Council as the final court. What are your views of the removal of the Privy Council?
Well, go ahead, Ravi.
Yeah, maybe both of you can take it off.
Yeah, sure. Well, I was just gonna say, having seen the way that this case progressed, right, where we lost it to the High Court, we lost it in the Court of Appeal. So, you had 4 justices in Trinidad and Tobago rule against it. Then we went to the Privy Council, and even in the Privy Council, it's a 3-2 margin of victory. The thing about it, in Trinidad and Tobago, right, because we are such a young and evolving democracy, I don't think we have a grasp on what democracy really means. And I don't think we like to challenge pre-established orders in Trinidad and Tobago, because we don't have the confidence to do it. And that's the reason why you'll find that the courts, rather than challenging decisions, they will more likely than not uphold precedents that were set in the past, right? And that's what happened in Trinidad and Tobago. They were kind of skeptical about doing it. And that's why we needed to go to the Privy Council. The UK, of course, established hundreds and hundreds of years ago. Having the CCJ and taking the same judges who sit in local courts, right? Because it'll be the same persons, and transferring them over to the final Court of Appeal. I think would be to a detriment of Trinidad and Tobago at this time, because I don't think that, because if we had the same court justices sitting in the CCJ hearing this matter, I don't know that the ruling would have been different from the ones we got in the Court of Appeal. And again, I'm not trying to admonish anyone. I'm not trying to criticize anyone. I'm just saying that it's a reality that they just don't have that confidence in themselves or in the country to make the types of rulings that you would get out of the Privy Council. And it's because of their years of experience. Jetty.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree that sometimes I feel that it also has to do with the breadth of experience that the Privy Council judges would have. You remember the Privy Council, they are hearing matters from all over the world. These are people who have served, throughout the courts in England, and then appointed to the Privy Council. So the breadth and depth of their experience is a lot greater, and perhaps that helps them to some extent to be a little more willing and able and confident, as Ravi would say, to step outside the box sometimes with certain matters. And maybe that doesn't always happen here. I'm not saying it doesn't, but from, it's perhaps you feel a little more, these unique and very groundbreaking matters. I think the breadth of experience the Privy Council judges have serves to our benefit. I would also go so far as to say, look, in politically sensitive matters, because we are a small society and we are such a close-knit society, I believe that the majority of people in the country still feel they take a little bit of comfort in knowing that in very politically sensitive matters, judges are so removed from the situation. It helps their perspective. They aren't colored by any sort of their views aren't colored by any sort of allegiance. They have no friendships with people, in who hold office on either side. As far as they are concerned, the five Lolos sitting in London don't know what is a PNM and what is a UNC, and I think that in some of these kinds of matters, I think it's very useful. Whether, I'm not saying any judge here is biased or has an inherent bias, but the perception may very well be there based on their past experience, who they are, what they are, who are their friends. Many, many, many different factors could lead people to perhaps perceive that judges may have a little bit of bias here. And when you go to the Privy Council, well, there's no question of bias. Nobody's friend. Nobody's nobody went to school together. Nobody went to law school together. We're just all, like I said, they don't know what is a PNM and what is a UNC if you ask them. They know government, opposition, and they couldn't care less who's who in the zoo. And they just operate accordingly. So that sort of distance, I think, bolsters the confidence that people may have in decisions coming out of the Privy Council.
I think that's quite a very logical argument in terms of our political landscape and how we view things. I mean, even the ceremony for awarding silk recently, there was that conversation about optics and independence as well there. So I tend to almost agree with the position that has been stated here. Now, Mr. Maharaj, Shanta earlier on indicated that, is such a young person taking, the government to court. And of course, there's some who are going to say you're a hero, that congratulations, it's a win for democracy. But then I'm sure you get some backlash from that kind of thing, from persons who may disagree with your enthusiasm and your activism. My question to you is, what would be your advice for young persons who want to stand up and speak out and be loud and advocate for what they think is right in this country? What would be your advice despite the backlash?
Well, honestly, you have to know what it is you're getting into. You can't do these things if you have a thin skin or if you have any sort of interest that might be affected by getting involved in politics. That said, the thing about it, if people don't get up and stand up, raise their voices, take these matters to court, the government will continue to do whatever it is they're doing. And again, all of these things, all of these matters that we bring before the court, one consistent thing we've gotten in the rulings is that the court said the action of the government is illegal. What they're doing is illegal, it's wrong, and without going to the courts, without taking that step to go to the courts and get something done, the government would have nothing standing in their way of these illegal activities. So you need persons really to understand that without action from the citizens, the government can do whatever they want. Yes, there's the opposition to fight them in parliament, and they've been doing an excellent job in doing so, but things get past them because of the way parliament is structured. Look at the same local government amendments. The opposition opposed them and didn't vote for them, but the government was able to pass them through a simple majority. And so really and truly, whenever there is injustice taking place, we need persons, because I won't be able to do everything on my own. And there are many things affecting people that I'm simply not aware of. There's smaller things happening that may not affect the entire nation. Everyone needs to come forward, say something, do something. And we also need to stand up and support the people who are doing these things, because I think that is very important as well. Without the support, people don't have the confidence to do it. They don't have the security to do it, and they feel like it's them alone going and doing these things. I think that is something that we need to put in place as well. I've gotten a lot of support from Mrs. Kamala Prasad-Bissessar, from the United National Congress on a whole, and my friends and my family. Without that support, I don't know, because again, you have cases that will go on for months, sometimes years in the court, and you have to go through different levels of court. You have High Court, Court of Appeal, Privy Council, those things. It can be taxing on anybody. So really and truly, whenever someone comes forward, steps forward, whoever it is, if they're doing something that is either for the protection of their rights or for the protection of all of our rights, I think we need to come forward and support those persons, encourage them and help them fight for it. Because at the end of the day, they're not only fighting for themselves, they're fighting for the rights and freedoms of all citizens of this country.
Senator, we have seen a few councillors write to the Minister of Local Government questioning if they have authority to hold office, and we have seen no response from the Minister nor the government on this. Where does this put councillors as well as their, if they have the duties, and how does it affect people and local government in that way? Now, on one hand, they cannot perform their job because it's illegal. So what are the implications of this?
Well, firstly, let me say that I think it is most irresponsible for the government to continue to carry on in the way that they are carrying on now, where they are essentially, I think, in hiding from the people of Trinidad and Tobago. They have lost an election. They know the implication of it is that there's no deferral, and yet still all they have done is try to make excuses, change the narrative, and then deflect the questions and state that they are I think seeking advice. Now, I heard today they said that the Prime Minister will speak tomorrow in the Parliament or address the issue. It's very sad that it took almost a week to get a response from the Prime Minister, the Minister of Local Government, who was so bombastic in his initial responses, when we brought this claim and even when he proclaimed the law and so on, and he was so confident. He's nowhere to be found. So he has not responded to any of the letters, as far as I am aware, where our councillors are councillors and who are trying to be responsible and know what to do. I am of the firm view that councils have absolutely no authority to be in office. If they pick up a pen to write within the corporation, they are stealing, because they have no office. Your office ended on the 2nd of December. That's what the court ruled. And unless the government takes action to remedy that or to change it, then that's the status that you're in. And again, Well, why leave people in limbo? Why not just say, well, this is how the court has ruled, kindly remove yourself and go home and we'll figure it out. But to remain silent is truly irresponsible. Where does it leave the citizenry, the burgesses, the citizens who reside in the town, in the boroughs and the corporations and the cities? Well, it leaves them in a state where you have to depend on the administrative arm of local government. The CEO, each corporation has a CEO, a corporate secretary, certain office holders like the chief engineer, etc., and staff. And they have to be able to just try to function with that in that capacity. There's a provision in the law, and again, if they were a responsible government, when we asked for an injunction and for a speedy trial, they did not agree with us. But there's a provision in the law where there's an interregnum between the council's dismissing office and the outer limit for the holding of the election, and that is 90 days. And we said that the matter should be heard within those 90 days because we believe that, during that period of time, the law catered for the corporation to basically act with with what they had and with the administrative arm being in place. It also permitted the chairman and the or in this case of a city a mayor to remain in office and to run the corporation together with the CEO. So that is what should have happened, and I believe that is what perhaps will have to happen right now until the government get it together and make some sort of statement and determination of what they are going to do moving forward. But it's truly amazing that in the face of this sort of confusion, that a government could choose to remain silent.
No, and I just want to add on what Jati was saying there, because as she rightly said, one of the matters we had initially raised was the injunction for persons serving in the previous council, because we were well aware and acutely aware that their term would have come to an end on the 2nd of December. And yeah, we went to court, we tried to get it. That was the first matter we lost in the High Court, was the injunction. And the thing about it, the thing I want to raise is that the government's counsel, both in the High Court and the Court of Appeal, was questioning, why was it necessary to have an injunction? Why was it necessary? And, there was a notion that the case would have ended prior to the end of the interregnum, which he said, which would have been March 3rd. Yeah, and and they were making this thing about what would happen if the councils were to be filled by persons who were not there, and they were saying it was nothing major, so what, and that was the reason that the High Court Justice refused to give us the injunction. And now here we are, 3 months removed from the end of the interregnum date, 6 months removed from the end of their term in office, and we still don't know, even after getting the Privy Council, when and if these persons are serving in office and when that term will come to an end. And really and truly, maybe there was an excuse up until the point that the Privy Council ruled, because there was an unsurety of how they would rule and whether these persons would be found to be serving in office illegally. But after Thursday and after the dates that the ruling came down, there is no excuse for the government anymore. They had a responsibility to terminate the contracts with these persons immediately and to announce to the nation that all councils had expired on December the 3rd. And the longer that it goes on, the longer that this illegal activity continues.
Sorry about that. I want to shout out some of the persons on the live. We have over 400 persons viewing this right now. So this discussion seems to be one where persons want to hear, they want to see it. And I know that's quite a large number usually for this program. So congratulations to everyone who is present and a part of this discussion. I see there are a few hands up, and we're going to go into our Q&A session in a while where we would be taking questions from the audience. Of course, there's only so many questions that we can take. But I want to ask a question, and I want to throw this out to the panel. Now, in a recent article by The Guardian, the Law Association of Trinidad and Tobago expressed its support for public discourse surrounding the Privy Council ruling. How important is it for citizens to engage in these discussions? And what role do you believe public opinion plays in shaping legal and political outcomes? I want to start with Senator Lakshmi Dayal, and I'll come to Mr. Maharaj after about this question.
Well, public discourse on the decision itself. I mean, I think we're having a lot of that. I think any law, any reform, any move to change the status quo requires consultation. It may not be as wide as open general public consultation. Perhaps sometimes you just need to have consultation with specific stakeholders, but I've never heard of any negative effect of consultation. The widest possible consultation is always welcomed, in my view. What you ought not to do, though, however, is to delay implementation of important policies because you're consulting, then you get stuck in what you call analysis paralysis. But very strategic, targeted, time-specific consultations on any matter that comes before the parliament, on any policy being developed and pushed and promoted by the government really requires, I think, consultation. The second question is what is the role? Sorry, what was it? The role that the public plays in political discourse and so on.
Legal and
outcomes.
outcomes.
Shaping outcomes, yeah. Shaping legal outcomes, perhaps not much. The law is the law. So what the law is and how Parliament makes the law may be shaped by, how to put it, public opinion. But at the end of the day, the interpretation of the law falls to the judiciary, and they ought not to be influenced by public opinion. Political outcomes, however, definitely, at the end of the day, that's what politics is about. It's about winning public opinion, public support for your measures. It's about convincing those in the public that you have the better plan, you have the better ideas, and so on. And so you always want to entertain public opinion. You always want to solicit public opinion. You always want to try to win public opinion. So it has a very active role in shaping. I think that public opinion is the most important thing that shapes political outcomes and political decision making.
Mr. Maharaj, same question.
Well, Janji answered it, I think, pretty thoroughly. Something I want to touch on in regards to the Law Association's response to is that while they were discussing, and rightly so, they said, that the Attorney General should not be discouraging public discourse on legal matters, whether or not the public understands it fully or not. I think they left out a part where the Attorney General himself, in making the statements that he made last Thursday, showed that not only he didn't understand the law and the ruling that was handed down, but he showed a contempt for the courts, he showed a contempt for the law, and he showed a contempt for the people of Trinidad and Tobago in the way that he chose not to acknowledge, not to accept, and not to act upon the ruling that was handed down that very morning. And the manner in which he came, this crass, kind of arrogant way that, he politicized the entire matter to an extent where, I mean, I had people call me saying, they were laughing at the thing. But really and truly, it was a sad day for Trinidad and Tobago in seeing an Attorney General make a mockery of the courts. And I feel that in explaining that, yes, discourse is necessary, and in some cases, the discourse may not always be accurate in terms of the public knowledge of the law. I think for an Attorney General to be making the same mistakes and then trying to criticize the public for doing the exact same thing that he was doing, I think is something that the Law Association should have taken up and should have corrected on as well. Jati?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So at this time, we're gonna cut to our Q&A session. I see a hand up, Trinity Bone. So I'm gonna unmute you so you can ask your question or comment on the program.
Good night, ladies and gentlemen, and good night to our two learned luminaries, legal luminaries. I'd like to take the conversation to a different level. We have established through the Privy Council that the government has acted illegally. And we have many examples prior to this where the government acted illegally with the Bliss, Prasad, and the Paula issue, with the police commissioner, with the Nelson Gate issue, and there are others. But now that we have established that the government is acting illegally, how are we going to leave this government in office? Why can't we now go forward with this and lobby for removing this government out of office? Senator Gianti?
Yeah, I think that would be that question with the Senator.
Well, I mean, that's my life's work. That's what I do every day. Why we can't? We are doing it. It's for other people to do it. At the end of the day, politicians hold office, but we still have one vote, right? I still have the same one vote that you have, that your neighbors have, that your family have, that everybody else has. So removing the government, there's one way to remove a government, and that's through an election. So it's not for me to say that I will remove them because they have acted illegally. It's just for, as far as I'm concerned, I've done my job. I've highlighted the illegality. Ravi and I and Mr. Ram Logan and others, we've done our part. It is now for the voters to see the many instances where they are comfortable with breaking the law. The reason why we are on programs like this is so that we can break it down for people to understand the implications of what they have done and why it is wrong. And the public has to make that decision when they go to the polls.
I'm seeing a question here from Roshan. He said, what if the government uses a simple majority to remove the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government, or postpone the local government election like Prime Minister Manning did between 2006 to 2009? That question comes from one of the viewers.
So that is a possibility. It seems to me that, and you know, one of the things that we did in fact raise is that the precedent existed whereby you could defer an election because it was done during the Manning administration. And we saw no reason why, if it is that an election had to be postponed on the basis that it was necessary to roll out more of the reforms, etc., that is the model that was used. It is possible that they will do it, but you see, the difference between what they tried to do here and that, and what Mr. Manning did by bringing an express provision to Parliament, is that when you do so, you face you have to debate, you have to actually say and give reasons to the Parliament, you have to account to the people. You will have to face the political consequences of your decision. So if now, having lost the election, they decide to go about putting off the election even further, it will be an admission on their part that what they really want to do is avoid an election and avoid facing the electorate. And I don't know that they are prepared to make that concession. And if they do, they really, they're going to take a public beating over it.
Yeah.
Right.
In addition to that, I just want to say something. When during the course of the case, the argument by the government's counsel was that the reason that they decided to postpone the election by a year was to implement certain measures that had been passed in the local government amendment bill last year. And they wanted to roll it out in stages over the course of a year, so that all of these things will be in place for the incoming term whenever election was held at the end of the year. The thing about it, we're in May, right? And Parliament is going to go on summer leave just now, and they're going to come back in September or October. The thing about, not one of the amendments that they had promised to be implemented had been implemented up until this point. And this is 6 months after the term of the last council would have come to an end in December. So the question is, if they hadn't done it until now, when were they going to do it? How were they going to do it? And why was it necessary to extend it for the entire year if you're going to just do it in a few months? This is something that could have been done at the end of last year for the incoming term, and the election didn't need to be postponed. But if you said you're going to do it over the course of a year so that it can be rolled out in stages and then you have half the year go, it shows that the government wasn't telling the truth and the reasons behind the postponement of the election.
We have another question from Dr. R. Augustus Philip, and his question is, given that courts interpret the law, should we look towards constitutional reform? It was developed for 1962 and then 1976. What are our needs for constitutional reform? Maybe Senator, you want to take this one?
Yeah, sorry, I thought I forgot I didn't unmute. Yeah, there are many needs for constitutional reform. A good place to start, I think, would be if we review the UNC had done under the Punishment Administration. We had a wide range of consultations. There was a commission set up, and they did consultations, and they have a report that they delivered on some of the proposals for constitutional reform. I would say, even the way we elect a president, because it really is the government's choice. At the end of the day, they have a majority. They can elect a president. The Speaker of the House, the President of the Senate. These are all positions that, by default, the government tends to have its way because they have the majority of seats, and it's not even a special majority, it's a simple majority. So those offices that you expect to be independent, they are sometimes, again, the perception is that they are not independent. There are many things for constitutional reform that I think that we require. Like I mentioned earlier, I do believe that fixed dates for elections, having local government as part of our constitution so that it cannot be removed or think of it. In the morning, the government by simple majority could abolish the whole municipal corporations that can do away with local government altogether, because they do not enjoy any kind of constitutional or special majority protection. It's just a simple majority piece of legislation that could be changed, chopped up, cut away, added to, or abolished altogether by way of a simple majority. And for something that we place so much emphasis on, I don't know if that is the way we want to have it. So a lot of constitutional reform is we can have about 10 shows series on constitutional reform and discuss the needs of the country as a maturing democracy, because you're right, it's 60 something years old, our constitution, and I think it's time that we apart from little amendments here and there, but it is perhaps time that we look and figure out a better way to do certain things.
So this comment was left on the chat. I know it could be a very controversial one, but I would still ask for your comments on it. So Richard said, please keep the Privy Council as our final court of appeal. If this case had stood up or was sent to the CCJ, you would not have gotten that fair and impartial judgment. What are your views?
Oh gosh. Well,
as a practicing attorney,
I know you need to be careful.
I will say no comment. I will say no comment. I would not wish to speculate on that, but there's a reason we have an appellate process, and the UNC, well, the team took the decision that we would go the full way in terms of exhausting all levels in terms of the appellate process. Let me borrow a page from the book of the Attorney General in his statement in the Parliament when he spoke on the Brent Thomas matter. Sometimes judges can make mistakes, and so that's why you have appeals in place. And in this case, we had our appeal, and we utilized the opportunity to have the appeal, and we won. Whether or not it would have gone differently if it was a CCJ or not, I would not dare to speculate. As I said before, though, and perhaps this comment reflects the perception that having a court so far removed from the political landscape and insulated from any sort of influence from the personalities and so on, and political personalities and parties and all of that, is perhaps a good thing.
I'm also seeing on the chat that several persons are congratulating Ravi, Anand, Ramlogan, Jayanti, and Vishal. So I just feel the need to mention that and once again congratulate each of you of you all who would have played a part in this win. Now we are running out of time, and I want to get some closing statements from both of our panelists. So I'll start with Mr. Maharaj.
Well, I just wanted to thank everyone again. Thanks for your support. Thanks for having me this evening. And, you know, we will continue to fight for democracy. We will continue to fight for the rights of the people. You know, the government has been adamant in trying to do whatever they want, and they criticize anyone who speaks up against them, who raises a matter against them. But really and truly, if we stand together, if we stand united, and if we come forward and stand up against the government, I think we can effect real change. So thanks again to everyone for your support, and thank you for having me.
Thanks for taking up the invitation. I mean, at this point, you're like a friend to the campus. It's your second time being here. So thanks for always being available to have a discussion with us. Of course, to you, Senator Lakshmi Dayal, closing statements.
Well, I would say in closing that, you know, sometimes the battle is won, but the war is still raging. So this is the one battle that has been won in our quest to hold our government to account. I tend to agree with the initial statement made that, look, we've had so many instances, and if I'm sounding a little hoarse, it's because I've spent the better part of the day speaking about the fact that, you know, there's so many instances where this government has simply trampled over rights, infringed the Constitution, breached the separation of powers, and it goes on and on and on. And as I said, winning one battle, we still have a war to win, and the war and the winning of the war is ultimately removing the government from office. So this is, yes, a victory for us. It's a victory for the people. It is a victory in terms of we have now a lot, you know, a precedent in place in terms of interpretation of laws and dealing with elections, etc., etc. But I think the bigger picture for us here is that we still have a government that I consider to be lawless. The mere fact that they have left corporations in limbo from last Thursday to now suggests to me that they are a lawless government with no respect for the rule of law, and ultimately have to be, you know, removed from office. So that's my closing comment that I would want to say today, and that it's time for them to call a damn election.
Thank you. So to Mr. Maharaj, Mr. Ravi Maharaj, thank you. Senator Jayanti Lakshmi Dayal, thank you for joining us tonight and shedding light on the significance of the Privy Council ruling. Your insights have provided us with a deeper understanding of the impact of this decision on our democracy. As we conclude tonight's episode of Critical Conversations with the Compass, let us remember that our fight for our democratic rights require constant vigilance. It is through conversations like this that we can foster a more inclusive society. To all our viewers, thank you, the usuals, thank you for joining in, and stay tuned for our next episode where we will continue to explore critical issues that shape our nation. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.